Greetings, non-feminist men and women of the world. Today is Monday, the 25th of January, 2015. Welcome to episode number 80 of the Vanguard report. So, I don't think this is my imagination. The groundswell of popular anti-feminism, mainstream anti-feminism, is really happening. We are approaching some kind of a critical mass in terms of numbers. All kinds of people seem to have a problem with feminism these days. They're popping up everywhere. And when I say all kinds of people, I really do mean all kinds. It's getting harder and harder to generalize about them. Certainly, they're not the same people we knew 10 or 12 years ago. They're not the early scouts and paratroopers and shock troops anymore. They're the main divisions, and I think they might even be hauling the supplies in and building some infrastructure. If there is one group whom we may justifiably wrap in one big negative blanket in this world, indiscriminately, that group would be feminists. It is not our job as non-feminists to sort them out. They must get busy and sort themselves out and explain why the hell they haven't done so earlier. They have brought this judgment upon themselves in spades. As non-feminists, we represent no particular group or movement or ideology. We represent only a broad sector of the human race. As it happens, the majority. We are definable or knowable principally as an absence of feminism, a lack of feminism. And whatever additional qualities we might possess, we possess them as individuals. There is no guilt by association in being not a feminist. Good heavens, one does not incur guilt through membership in 4/5 of the human race. Some non-feminists are wonderful people. Other non-feminists are terrible people. But one central fact characterizes us as a class, namely that the feminist worldview does not place us under any form of collective moral or intellectual regulation. It does not form the basis of our interactions with each other. Yes, and the liberty of the non-feminist sector belongs to any individual, man or woman, who can muster the necessary moral initiative and intellectual moxie to claim it. Another way of expressing all this is to say that the non-feminist sector has no responsibility to police itself or curate itself. It is too broad and too diverse for that. We are not narrowly understandable as a political entity with an ideological base. We are fully entitled to say not all non-feminists are like that, as a way of silencing anybody who wants to treat us as a collective. Feminism, by contrast, has very much of a responsibility to police itself and curate itself, because feminism is indeed narrowly understandable as a political entity with an ideological base. It's monolithic. The statement, not all feminists are like that, NAFALT, is a vapid cliche meant only to derail the urgently necessary inquest into feminism's true character and mode of operation. It doesn't matter if all feminists are like that or not. The point is that all feminism is like that, and we need to map out the reasons for this. But most of all, we need to put a stop to what is happening. We need to put a stop to what is happening. All of this nasty shit that's happening, that's going on in the world. So, I'm Fidelbogen, your host for episode number 80 of the Vanguard Report. Today, my co-host is Elizabeth Hobson from the sceptered Isle of Albion, which is an insular landmass off the northern coast of France. Elizabeth, say hello to the world.
Good night, Fidelbogen. Good night, listeners. I do want to warn you that it's midnight here and I've had a very busy day, so you might be about to witness me fall asleep live on air.
Oh, well, the hazard from my end is that my computer will fall asleep. My computer has narcolepsy. It's known to crash intermittently. It's happened once or twice on the Vanguard Report. Hopefully it will not happen today. Anyway, welcome to the Vanguard Report, Elizabeth. This is Elizabeth's. Yes, and you're welcome. This is Elizabeth's second time co-hosting the Vanguard Report. Anyway, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, a lot of stuff. We got all kinds of juicy goodies to talk about. Oh, where should I begin? We're going to jump right into Twitter. It seems there was this big old rowdy-dow happening on Twitter just a couple of days ago in connection with the nefarious phrase rabid feminist. And this has been given the quaint name of Dictionary Gate, because it had something to do with the dictionary, with the Oxford English Dictionary, I believe. Elizabeth brought this to my attention, and I think Elizabeth is a little bit more plugged into this than I am. Elizabeth, I think maybe you can sort of give us the rundown on this Dictionary Gate thing?
Absolutely. So basically, this Michael Oman Reagan tweeted, "Hey, at Oxford Words, why is rabid feminist the usage example of rabid in your dictionary? Maybe change that." So he's got like 924 retweets of that last time I checked, and he got some kind of, apology from them of some description. But I did check the Oxford Dictionary website earlier, and the example sentence is still a rabid feminist. So it's all good there, I think, really.
It's all good in the hood there. Well, I'm glad that they're standing their ground. So this Michael Reagan, he just noticed this. Now, this was on a Twitter account called, what was it, Oxford Words?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that the official Twitter presence of the Oxford English Dictionary?
I think it is, yeah. It looks like.
Or is it just somebody that took up the name? So the OED, there is an online OED, is that correct?
Sorry?
I said, is there an online version of the Oxford English Dictionary?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, well, I've never been there, I've never seen it. I'm going to have to look at that.
I can tweet that out, actually.
Well, we can pop a link into the chat bar there. That'd be nice.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as petitioning the dictionary goes. do you think that we should be talking to them about the Fidelbogen definition of feminism?
I've got a couple definitions of feminism. Well, I know, Elizabeth, you made some efforts along that line already. Funny thing happened. I proposed a new definition of feminism, which I actually read out on the Vanguard report 2 weeks ago when I was with Nick. And I don't have it with me right at the moment. I could probably dig it up, but there's that, and then there's my usual definition of feminism, which is feminism is the project to increase the power of women with no stipulated endpoint. The new definition I came up with was, let me see if I can recall it. Feminism is the belief that women are disadvantaged compared to men, and that this is a societal condition which must be corrected. That's my other definition of feminism, and I came up with that one rather recently. And what I like about that definition is, number one, there's nothing about it that any feminist anywhere could possibly object to. Anybody could settle on that as a definition of feminism. And the other thing that's nice about it, that I like about it, is that it completely abandons the accursed word equality, or the word equal. The word equal or equality is simply not in there. And it avoids the intellectual dishonesty which is inherent in any use of the term equality or equal. The loading of the dice, which goes along with that. When they use that, it's just part of the definition. It just says feminism is the belief that women are disadvantaged compared to men. It lays out feminism as a belief system. Oh, I see Elizabeth is going to be away from the computer for a couple of minutes. So it looks like it's just me here for a while. Anyway, yes, that thing on Twitter, DictionaryGate as it's called, people were very unhappy about the fact that somebody used feminist as an example of rabid. It was the entry for the word rabid, meaning struck with rabies, and as an example they said a rabid feminist. And I guess there they didn't mean literally rabies, but they meant being in a rabid frame of mind or fanatical frame of mind. And the example they gave was feminist. And I think that's a pretty good example because, after all, haven't we all known rabid feminists? Aren't feminists known for being rabid? Yes, I think they are in the real world. In fact, I know they are. And anybody who is the least bit in touch with the real world knows this. And the only people who are all bent upon denying this, all keen to pave over this reality, are feminists. They don't like to be told that there are such things as rabid feminists, and yet anybody with his eyes open cannot help but see all of the rabid feminists that are running around in the world. They're not rare, and boy, are they ever a problem. So I thought that was a good way to illustrate the concept of rabid, a rabid feminist. And sounds like somebody on our side is working for the Oxford English Dictionary. Yeah, I'm liking this. I'm liking it a lot. So go look up hashtag DictionaryGate, and you can get the lowdown on that. You'll find enough links there that will link you into what's happening if this strikes your curiosity. And Elizabeth knows more about this than I do, but apparently this Michael Reagan guy has been quite active, and I guess it got a lot of retweets. But moving right along. Elizabeth, are you back yet?
I am back.
Oh, great. Anything you want to say about DictionaryGate before we move along into something else?
No, I think that about covers it. If you go to hashtag DictionaryGate, you'll see me there.
All right, yes. And yeah, it would be nice to see the Oxford English Dictionary, which is one of the great dictionaries of the entire English language, alongside of Webster's, to see them adopt a definition of feminism like the one I proposed. Feminism, the belief that women are disadvantaged in comparison to men, and that this is a societal condition which needs to be corrected. That's nice. That's good, because at least it leaves the possibility open that maybe you don't share the belief. By calling it a belief, it says it puts it in the category of things upon which you are entitled to have a contrary opinion. And yet, I don't see how any feminists could object to the idea that feminism thinks women are disadvantaged compared to men, and that this needs to be corrected in society. So that was Dictionary Gate. Just thought I'd tell everybody about it. Look up hashtag Dictionary Gate on Twitter. But let's move along. I think by now we've all heard about Gregory Alan Elliott. Gregory Alan Elliott, the artist in Toronto, Ontario, who got in a big heap of trouble because he disagreed with a feminist. He challenged a feminist. He got in a feminist's face. He held a feminist accountable for her behavior, basically, is what he did. I don't think it was just so much him disagreeing with her as the way that he disagreed with her and the point upon which that disagreement happened. The feminist in question was Stephanie Guthrie of Toronto, who's quite a prominent feminist activist in Toronto. Her and also another feminist named gosh, I forget her name, Heather Riley, I think it was. Anyway, Steph Guthrie was the main one. And Steph Guthrie, prior to the debacle with Gregory Alan Elliott, had gotten into this episode. There was some young man by the name of Bendel Spur who had written a kind of trashy little computer game called Punch Anita Sarkeesian in the Face. Okay, arguably, it was in poor taste. I don't know, but that sort of thing. It's like on the level of pinning somebody's picture up on the dartboard and throwing darts at it. I mean, somebody who's unpopular, you throw pictures at, you throw darts at their picture, you burn them in effigy. I mean, there are many ways that the people can express their displeasure with somebody who has aggrieved them. And Anita Sarkeesian has certainly aggrieved a lot of people. Make no mistake, Anita Sarkeesian is a really crappy human being. He's a con artist and a liar and a cry boy. I can't think of much good to say about Anita Sarkeesian. Okay. She's bad news, like so many feminists are. And she's a fairly typical feminist. Anyway, when Steph Guthrie heard about this young Bendel Spur who had made this Punch Anita Sarkeesian in the Face computer game, then she went on the warpath and decided to basically destroy this young man's life. She doxed him and did what she could to expose him to consequences in the real world, which could include, getting fired from his job, getting subjected to whatever social grief that anybody in his city might have seen fit to inflict upon him, up to and including, ironically enough, possibly even punching him in the face. You never know about that. So we had one rotten feminist, Anita Sarkeesian, who was the object of this young man's ire. And then we had another rotten feminist jumping to the defense of the first rotten feminist. Boy, those rotten feminists in the rotten sisterhood, they really got each other's backs, don't they? And Well, Gregory Alan Elliott, when he saw what was going on, he was not happy about this at all. And he had some words with Steph Guthrie on Twitter. And one thing led to another. Without going into the details too much, Steph Guthrie decided that it wasn't enough to get Bendel and Spur in trouble and wreck Bendel and Spur's life. Now she had to go and wreck Gregory Alan Elliott's life as well. And she proceeded to attempt to do exactly that. And boy, she really did wreck his life. She seriously derailed his life for a little bit over 3 years. I believe this thing started back in 2012. And she seriously fucked his life up. Got him thrown in jail for a while. Got him banned from using the internet, which he vitally needed to make a living. Now he's broke with his legal fees and with not being able to make a living. I mean, she really put him through hell, this feminist Stephanie Guthrie. Finally, as I think we all know, Gregory Alan Elliott is now a free man. He was declared not guilty, and it's all over for him. Hurrah! We on the non-feminist side are celebrating. On the feminist side, they're very unhappy. They're having a hissy fit, a butthurt hissy fit about this. They don't like it. They don't like that this man is basically perfectly innocent man was let go by the court of law. They were hoping he would be thrown in jail. They really wanted to wreck his life. And now it's not going to happen. And this episode sets a precedent. This episode plants a seed for the future. Gregory Alan Elliott dared to disagree with a feminist. A feminist tried to take revenge on him for disagreeing, and it didn't work. And Gregory Alan Elliott has cleared the path, has broken the ice for more and more people to jump up there and start disagreeing with feminists. And that is exactly the thing we need to do. We just need to stand up and disagree with feminists. And Elizabeth, you think that's a good idea, that people should just stand up publicly and start disagreeing with feminists?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I know you talk about how we need to kind of specialize and have, you know, people who are committed to kind of the anti-feminism aspect, people who are focusing on men's rights. But I think also, you know, the benefit of having kind of people who are known for other things, you know, standing up and saying that they're non-feminist and not making not feeling the need to explain that these kind of things are good PR, and I think it's all moving along pretty well, to be honest, don't you?
Yes, I do, and as we move along in the episode, we're going to cover some of the reasons why it's moving along very well. Basically, I've covered this before. I won't try to cover it again now, but what the feminists are doing is trying to drive a wedge between the idea of men's rights or men's issues on the one side and anti-feminism on the other. They're trying to isolate anti-feminism so that men's rights or men's issues becomes more easily co-optable by them. And then they can just push anti-feminism out of the picture, because anti-feminism is the thing they fear most. And really all anti-feminism is just taking a contrary attitude toward feminism, opposing feminism. And that opposition can take just about any form, but the critical thing is that you are putting up some opposition or some resistance. And you call yourself a counter-feminist, as I do. You can call yourself a critical non-feminist, as I do. Feminists over the years have very, very successfully conflated the term anti-feminist with anti-female or anti-woman. And they constantly do that. They just kind of go back and forth, and they slop those two meanings into the same bucket so that nobody can keep track of the difference anymore. It's very sneaky. I call it hiding behind women. That's what they're doing when they mix up anti-feminist and they try to make that sound like the same thing as misogyny. They're hiding behind women. They're using women, all women, not just feminists, but women in general, as their shield. And it is a really, really sleazy thing that they're doing. And it's a cancerous thing, and I think, Elizabeth, you probably would agree with that.
Of course, of course. Can I go back to Gregory Alan Elliott?
Certainly.
Share my thoughts on that?
Certainly. You have thoughts about Gregory Alan Elliott.
Absolutely. Yes. And like you say, it's bad news for feminists. Good news for Gregory. Good news for the non-feminist sector. And not only is a precedent for free speech being protected by the law, but because Stephanie Guthrie is so fucking awful. There's this thing in business called goodwill, and what that reflects is that if people think that you're a bad guy, they don't want to do business with you. So companies go to, incredible lengths like setting up charitable foundations. They try not to damage the environment or wildlife or human health because it's really important. If you don't come across as a good guy, people just don't want to deal with you. And so Stephanie has failed miserably to manipulate the court, and she's shown herself to be a vile little bully. Ultimately, I'd like to thank her for all that she's done to discredit feminism.
I wonder, Elizabeth, have you read the defense submission to the court, stating the case on behalf of Gregory Alan Elliott?
I have not.
Oh, well, I recommend it. And in fact, I've got the link to it. That would be Q number 2 on your Q list. That will take you directly to a PDF file, which will open up in your browser. And it's 72 pages. It's worth reading. I've read all 72 pages. And you go there, right-click, save. You should keep a copy of that PDF file for yourself. That is text material. That is study material that you'll want to use in the future. There's so much there. The way that the lawyers lay out their case in the defense of Mr. Elliott, and the way they tear apart Steph Guthrie and Heather Riley in there. It's really masterful, and it'll give you a lot of insight. And I really, really, really urge everybody to grab a copy of that PDF file off the web and keep it and study it in the days and months and years ahead, because it's a landmark thing, and this Gregory Alan Elliott case is a landmark thing. On Q number 1, we have a link to thestar.com, the Canadian newspaper. There's an article about Gregory Alan Elliott. I was going to read out the article, but I think we've covered so much about the case already, just sort of off the top of our head, that maybe I will skip over that. That's Q number 1, and if you want to read about it, well, there you go, Q number 1. Q number 2, as I said a minute ago, that's to the PDF file. That's to the submissions to the court by the counsel for the defense, summing up the case for Gregory Alan Elliott. And Q number 3 is the statement issued by the judge. I have not had time to read that, but there it is, and you can go read that as well. Anyway, I guess that wraps up Gregory Alan Elliott for now.
One more thing.
One more thing, yes.
One more thing. I happened to check out the Wikipedia page Guthrie versus Elliott earlier, and it's not visible. It's got this weird message that says, like, the purpose of this redirect is currently being discussed by the Wikipedia community. So I don't know what that's about. Does anyone know what that's about?
I have no idea. Redirect.
Slightly strange.
It is very strange. This case, I can tell you one thing. This Gregory Alan Elliott case is a landmark, and as we move ahead in time, it's going to get bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike things that get smaller when you move away from them, this is going to get bigger as we move away from it.
It's going to be remembered.
Yes, it's going to be remembered, and it should be remembered. So remember Gregory Alan Elliott. There is talk about Mr. Elliott suing the crap out of Steph Guthrie. And you know what? I hope he does, and I hope he wins. Yeah. I hate to sound vengeful, but, you know, I really, really hope he gets something happening in that department. It'd do my heart good. So, that was a Gregory Alan Elliott case. Mr. Elliott is now a free man. He got out of it. He beat the feminists, and the feminists are now licking their wounds. Vice.com did an article about that, which I haven't read yet, but they're trying to do some damage control on the whole case. They're putting the pro-feminist slant on that, and I'll have to read that later. Anyway, so I think we have a few female listeners out there. Ladies, I think feminism is not much good for anybody, but, you know, feminism is supposed to be for women, and feminism is ultimately leading toward a state of female supremacy. That's the only logical endpoint where it can end up if it continues to develop according to its own particular organic logic. Feminism can only grow in a more radical direction, and a radical direction ultimately means a female supremacist direction. And feminism, unchecked, unmodified, will convey the world in general in the direction of a female supremacist, well, state of affairs. Now, I don't think it's going to get there. Realistically, it will not get there. It's creating an unsustainable situation, and it's going to crash and burn. But I mean, if you just look at feminism and feminism operates consistently with its own logic, that is just where it's got to go. Now, other forces are going to intervene and stop it. I'm confident of that. But anyway, all right, if you're a woman, I mean, what's wrong with female supremacy? You know, girls rule, you know. That doesn't sound too bad. I mean, if I was a woman, why wouldn't I want to live in a female supremacist world where I could lord it over men and everything would be good for women? And, Elizabeth, do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh my goodness, what a big question.
Well, you don't have to, you don't have to bite it all off and chew all of it. I mean, just nibble on it a little bit.
Well, you know, it makes it what we have now with this kind of legal situation, and it's just, you know, the societal kind of situation. It makes it very difficult for a woman to be virtuous. You know, even with the sort of best intent, the information isn't out there, and
you mean just to be
the way people talk, you know, there's a lot of feminist kind of theories that have been
morally, moral or ethical. Is that what you're driving at?
Feminist ideas that have been kind of internalized by everyone in society, kind of assumptions.
Right. So basically there are no markers anymore or guides anymore of, outside of feminism. The only markers we've got are feminist markers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a rational morality. It's it's a belief. It's bullshit.
I think we can agree it's bullshit. And yeah,
but
and
also very
really
harmful to women because they end up making mistakes.
okay. That's one problem I see with a potential female supremacist future, or that is to say, a continuation of the development of feminism in the direction that it naturally wants to grow. The problem is, to any women who might be listening, a female supremacist future might not, really, even in a purely selfish way, it might not be as fun as you think. It might be a lot more nasty and brutish than you think. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't assume that it's just going to be fun for girls. What's happening with female supremacism is that you are setting one half of the human race against the other half and making enemies out of them. And that's just not a healthy situation. Just not a healthy situation any way you look at it. And I don't think it's going to end well. And I'm trying to be very objective here. I mean, obviously, me being a man, I've got plenty of reasons to not like feminism and not want to look into any kind of feminist future or face any kind of feminist future. But at the same time, I'm trying to be very objective and saying, okay, fine, from a woman's point of view, what's wrong with feminism? What's wrong with female supremacy as a final outcome to feminism's development through history? And, it would just be naive to think that it's fun or that it's going to be enjoyable, okay? Because it might not turn out that way. Think very carefully. Feminism is the project to increase the power of women with no stipulated endpoint. Well, the endpoint is female supremacism, and then more female supremacism, and deeper female supremacism. Well, eventually something's got to give. Something's got to break. Something's going to overheat, and everything's going to come down with a crash and a burn. It's probably best that we put a stop to this sooner rather than later, because the outcome in the long run, I don't think, is going to be pretty. And ladies, if you're listening right now, I just would urge you to think about that seriously and consider that. Female supremacism might not be such a great outcome for women, not to mention that it's not so good for men. And that's the point I wanted to make. Elizabeth, anything you want to add to that?
I'll leave it there.
Great. Okay. Well, we talked about Gregory Alan Elliott. We've talked about female supremacism. What are we going to do next? Oh, here we go. This is great. Go to cue number 4. This is an article at a website in England called insideman.co.uk. 3 reasons I don't support feminist equality campaigns. This was written by a fellow by the name of Glenn Poole. Glenn Poole writes for this Inside Man website. He is also a journalist who writes for such publications as The Guardian. The Guardian, and I think he writes for some other pretty famous newspapers over there in England. So, he's a bit of a celebrity, I would say. And he also did a TEDx talk. Not a TED talk, but a TEDx talk. Anyway, he's a bit of a name. And this is really fascinating. I want to read this article. I want to read this article. Nick Redding showed me this article about a week ago. And I want to read it to you now. Elizabeth, do you have any of the articles of the Qs open in your browser?
No, I don't. I don't. Where do I get them? I don't know where the Qs are.
Tell you what, I'm going to put this
Can you put it in the chat?
Yes, I can put this in the chat. So this is something you might want to have open in the browser. Okay, Elizabeth, can you open that in a browser tab?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you something. Elizabeth, can I ask you to go to that article and start reading it?
It's just loading. Okay.
Loading your browser.
Got it.
I've got to go away from the computer for about a minute, but I'll be right back. And Elizabeth, you keep the show rolling. I'll be right back.
Okay. The 3 reasons I don't support feminist equality campaigns. This week I was challenged by the university lecturer Martin Robb to stop touting myself as a non-feminist and give my backing to feminist campaigns for gender equality instead, writes Glenn Paul. Martin's challenge was a response to my article in the Daily Telegraph asserting that boys should have a right to choose whether to be feminist or not. So for the benefit of Martin and anyone else who is interested, I thought I'd outline the main 3 reasons I don't support feminist campaigns for gender equality. Here they are. I'm not a feminist. My definition of gender equality is different from most feminists. Many feminist initiatives designed to engage men in gender equality actively exclude non-feminists. That being the case, then why would I support feminist campaigns for gender equality when they don't align with my own principles? I'll expand on...
Hello, I'm back.
Hey. You want me to stop?
Let's see. Yeah, I think maybe I'll take over reading this. First, I got to find it. Where did you leave off now?
Okay, I was just underneath the 3
bullet points.
3 bullet points, yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to just back up a little bit here. So for the benefit of Martin and anyone else who is interested, I thought I'd outline the 3 reasons I don't support feminist campaigns for gender equality. Here they are. I'm not a feminist. My definition of gender equality is different from most feminists, and many feminist initiatives designed to engage men in gender equality actively exclude non-feminists. There we go. Actively exclude non-feminists. Well, I think we need to start including non-feminists, non-feminist voices, non-feminist perspectives. I think we need to get some intellectual diversity happening. Feminists need to confront people who are not feminists and benefit from their wisdom. So, to carry on with the article, that being the case, then why would I support feminist campaigns for gender equality when they don't align with my own principles? I'll expand on these 3 points in this article, but before I do, I'd like to address some of Martin's comments about me. Firstly, Martin describes me as someone who is, quote, simply playing games with labels by touting myself as a non-feminist. Well, I suppose feminists are touting themselves as feminists. Okay, tout is an interesting word to use. To me, it means to sell things, often illicitly for personal gain and at a great cost to others. Wikipedia describes a tout as a person who solicits in a persistent and annoying manner. It is neither a neutral nor a complimentary word. Why is this important? This is important to note because there is a subtle game of othering people who think differently here, which reflects the feminist movement's discomfort with intellectual diversity. Feminists are othering people who are not feminist. And othering is a word that they like to use a lot. It's part of their lingo, and I like the way somebody else here, somebody who's not a feminist, is working it back around on them. Martin presents feminism and male pro-feminism as the only legitimate gender political views. Wait a minute, as the only legitimate gender political views for a man to hold, and describes people like me who hold other views as touts. There you go. If you're not a feminist, you're not legitimate. What does it mean to stand outside feminism, he asks, as if those who are not feminist or pro-feminist belong to a mysterious other tribe with strange beliefs and superstitions. There is clearly an intellectual hierarchy in gender politics as far as Martin is concerned, and feminists, pro-feminists sit on top of it, and the others, like me, are the unwelcome outliers at the bottom of the hierarchy. Martin then accuses me of tarring all feminists as intolerant on the basis of an article in which I described the feminists whose work I was critiquing as being intelligent, compassionate, and self-aware. I use these words because I look for the greatness in all human beings, and in the case of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, I didn't have to look far. She is an extraordinary human being. Martin dismisses my acknowledgement as softening my criticism. It was no such thing. It was a heartfelt acknowledgement from one human being to another. At the same time, the title of her book, We Should All Be Feminists, is a fundamentalist statement that has been embraced by feminists who hold that viewpoint. We should all be feminists. Now, this sounds familiar. This is a theme I have been hearing from feminists, and I try to sound them out on that every chance I get, and very consistently they come up with the idea that everybody should be a feminist. And Elizabeth, have you encountered that attitude from very many feminists?
Of course, of course.
Mm-hmm. I thought so. Everybody has. Gloria Allred made the most definitive statement in that tradition. If you're not a feminist, you're a bigot. And I've heard so many variations on that theme. Basically, everybody's got to be a feminist. And the way they manage to engineer that mental trick, subjectively, is they decide what feminism is. Feminism is whatever lovely rainbow thing that they see in their mind. That's feminism. And everybody's got to measure up to that mental image that they have of feminism. Never mind what's happening in the real world. So feminism is beginning to sound like a kind of mental illness, to be honest. So, at the same time, the title of her book, We Should All Be Feminists, is a fundamentalist statement that has been embraced by feminists who hold that viewpoint. And my extensive lived experience, there you go, another word that feminists like to use, lived experience. My extensive lived experience of gender politics is that when feminists adopt a fundamentalist belief system that everyone else should be feminist too, there is a very real risk that they will become intolerant of others who don't share their worldview. Everything that Glenn Poole is saying here sounds so familiar. It's uncanny. In describing the act of holding a non-feminist worldview as touting, Martin demonstrates both his intolerance of and his difficulty having empathy for men who don't share his pro-feminist worldview. Martin says that in many years of working as a man alongside feminists, I've never been made to apologize for anything. Okay, he's quoting Martin here. I don't doubt that what Martin says about his lived experience of feminists is true, but why does he use his experience to invalidate my lived experience of feminism? See, he's using feminism as the measure of all things. Feminism is the yardstick that measures everything else. Why does his lived experience have validity but mine doesn't? This is a very common ploy used by pro-feminist men to dismiss the experiences of other non-feminist men. When a non-feminist man points out that feminism has a problem with intellectual diversity, for example, and is intolerant of those with different worldviews, for a pro-feminist man to respond by saying, I never had a problem, misses the point. Rather like a straight man saying to a gay man, well, I've never experienced any homophobic bullying from straight guys. The point is that the movement Martin is part of has a problem with the way it treats others. And for a movement that prides itself in promoting equality and diversity, that is a core issue. So even though Martin says he agrees with my assertion that we should teach our boys to become free thinkers who can choose for themselves whether they want to be feminist or not, now that's something no feminist could possibly agree with. Okay, no way. He still concludes by saying that if you're a man, you should get stuck in and lend your support to feminist campaigns for gender equality, even if, 1, you're not a feminist, 2, your definition of gender equality is different from most feminists, 3, many feminist initiatives designed to engage men in gender equality actively exclude non-feminists. You know, if it was that easy to go and work with feminists and cooperate and collaborate with feminists on their various activisms, in effect, you would be a feminist. The thing that makes you not a feminist is the same thing that makes it hard for you to get along with feminists and work with feminists. There is a natural tension, I think, between feminists and non-feminists. The only way you can work with feminists or cooperate with feminists is effectively to become a feminist yourself. That's what it amounts to. So, what does a non-feminist believe? Martin provides 3 examples of campaigns that non-feminist men should support, which provides me with a useful opportunity to demonstrate how my view of gender equality is different from most feminists, as the table below shows. And there is a table, 2 columns of bullet-pointed lists. What I believe is a non-feminist, and column B is what feminist equality campaigns believe. Okay, what I believe is a non-feminist. There are lots of areas in life where women and girls are unequal to men and boys, and vice versa. Contrast that to what feminist equality campaigns believe. There are lots of areas in life where women and girls are unequal to men and boys. Okay. Next, what I believe is a non-feminist. When men and women experience inequality and where it is appropriate, we should take collective action to address those inequalities. What feminist equality campaigns believe? When women experience inequality, we should take collective action to address those inequalities. Third item, what I believe is a non-feminist. Men's primary job in the drive for gender equality is to address the issues faced by men and boys and support initiatives focused on women and girls if they want to. Interesting. Men's primary job in the drive for gender equality is to address the issues faced by men and boys, parenthesis, and support initiatives focused on women and girls if they want to. What feminist equality campaigns believe? Men's primary role in the drive for gender equality is to support feminist initiatives focused on women and girls and oppose non-feminist gender equality initiatives. Final item, what I believe is a non-feminist. Equality of autonomy is a far more important measure of gender equality than equality of outcome, though equality of outcome is still an important measure. And what feminist equality campaigns believe, equality of outcome is by far the most important measure of gender equality, but only when it relates to women and girls. And that's the end of the table. What I get from this is that feminism is all about women, women, and women. But even if it does not actively hate men, it is pretty much indifferent to men and ignorant of men's needs in the male situation. That's the impression, the takeaway I get from reading through all of this. All right, to prove this point, here's what the three organizations that Martin says ensure equal chances for all have to say about gender equality. And here we go. He for She, made famous by Emma Watson. And by the way, Elizabeth, I see you as the anti-Emma.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll take that.
You are the anti-Emma.
It works for me.
You
yeah,
are,
I have tweeted under hashtag we for we a few times. I hated that. I hated he for she. Awful.
well, all that Emma Watson, I mean, you even have a similar sounding name, you know, Hobson, Watson, you know.
I see where you're going with that.
And, you know, you're like Emma's nefarious, dark, anti-feminist sister. I don't know how you and Emma would get along. I don't know if you would get along, the two of you. Anyway. So, he for she. This is a UN Women campaign that asks men to take the following pledge. I commit to take action against all forms of violence and discrimination faced by women and girls. Okay, I'll say right now, I do not take that pledge. That's far too broad and meaningless, and furthermore, it insults my intelligence. Okay. Note there's no commitment to take action against violence and discrimination faced by men and boys, even though around 80% of victims of violent death in the world every year are male. Okay, this thing where you commit to take action against all forms of violence and discrimination faced by women and girls, this ties right directly back to my new proposed definition of feminism, which is the belief that women are disadvantaged compared to men, and that this is a societal problem that must be corrected. Okay, it's just a belief. Now, when they say, I commit to take action against all forms of violence and discrimination faced by women and girls, it completely foregoes making the entire argument. It doesn't even make the case, you know, why you should do this, or why taking action against violence and discrimination against women and girls should be such a top priority. It simply doesn't explain that, okay? And this is what I find grossly defective about this, if I were to put it into words. Okay, the next organization is Men Engage. Men Engage says, we believe that men should be engaged in advancing the rights, health, and well-being of women and girls. No, I don't know. Why should they? Why shouldn't we all be engaged in advancing that rights and health of all each other? I mean, why this narrow, obsessive focus on women and girls? This is never explained, and it begs to be explained, it demands to be explained, but there is no explanation forthcoming at all. We believe that men should be engaged in advancing the rights, health, and well-being of women and girls. We are committed to working as allies, there's a buzzword for you, allies with women and women's rights organizations to achieve equality for women and girls. Well, you know, why should you achieve why not achieve equality for men and boys if the outcome is equality? Whether you achieve it for women or whether you achieve it for men, it's going to come to the same thing. So this focus, this narrow focus on women is problematic. Well, it is. It's very problematic. Note there's no concern for the rights, health, and well-being of men and boys, and no commitment to work with men's organizations to achieve equality for men and boys. White Ribbon. Oh, here we go. White Ribbon asks men to make the following pledge. I promise never to commit, condone, or remain silent about violence towards women. Okay, never commit, condone, or remain silent about violence toward women. Well, okay, that's a good one. I'm going to live up to that promise right now. Yes, there is violence against women. Yes, violence happens, and some of the violence happens against women. Okay? Now, do you want me to talk about that round the clock, 24/7? Yes, violence against women happens. Violence against men happens. Actually, more violence against men happens. Men suffer the bulk of all violence in the world. How long do I have to go on repeating the what ought to be commonplace, that yes, violence happens and sometimes it happens to women? That seems trite. Okay, I don't, maybe I'm missing something here. Promise never to commit, condone, or remain silent. Well, I promise not to. I'm not going to promise anything. I mean, I don't do that. I don't need to stand up and make a special promise about that. I mean, I don't commit or condone violence toward women or toward anybody. And anybody out there who doesn't know me can just assume that that's the kind of person I am until I prove otherwise. I don't need to make a special thing out of it. Okay, I find that very insulting. I'm affronted by that. I'm put off by that. All right? Okay, not only does this pledge ignore violence against men, this is also a deeply misleading pledge. In reality, the White Ribbon Campaign only wants men to say feminist approved things about violence toward women. Boy, he really nails it there. White Ribbon Campaign is a feminist organization. It is. I have been to several White Ribbon websites, and nowhere do I see a clear, unequivocal statement, we are a feminist organization. White Ribbon is a feminist organization. It's pretty obvious, but they don't feel like they have to spell it out. Okay, they don't have to affirmatively say it. I would say they should say it. I would say every feminist out there, whether it's a feminist individual or whether it's a feminist organization, should, on a regular basis, especially when they get into a conversation, should point blank, in very set terms, say, I am a feminist. They ought to do this a lot, because it puts them on notice, it puts everybody on notice, that yes, some people are feminists and some people are not. It's just a courtesy to everybody in the world who is not a feminist to regularly identify yourself as a feminist and not just assume that the world is your oyster, or feminism is everything, or feminism is the world. All right. Not only does this pledge ignore violence against men, this is also a deeply misleading pledge. In reality, the White Ribbon Campaign only wants men to say feminist-approved things about violence towards women, as the psychiatrist Dr. Tanvir Ahmed, that's a familiar name, Dr. Tanvir Ahmed found out earlier this year when White Ribbon took action to silence him for daring to voice a non-feminist view. Why would someone who is committed to promoting gender equality for all support initiatives that are about promoting gender equality for women and girls, but not men and boys? Very important point. Of course, we still don't know what is meant by the term gender equality, but I suppose that's best kept for another conversation. Why would I make the White Ribbon Pledge to never remain silent about violence against women when I know that if I speak out about this issue, that White Ribbon will want to silence me because I don't hold a feminist view on the subject? Brilliant! Brilliant! This wraps it all up. I like the way he phrases this. I know that if I speak out about this issue, the White Ribbon will want to silence me because I don't hold a feminist view on the subject. And this is true of feminism and feminists across the board. They want to silence you if you have anything non-feminist to say. Feminists who are fundamentalists don't welcome the simple idea that a diversity of worldviews is needed if we are to tackle major world problems like violence. As such, fundamentalist feminists are actively and at times abusively intolerant of people who hold different worldviews. Here's the feminist CEO of domestic violence charity, Karen Ingala Smith, responding to my article in The Telegraph on Twitter. Ha ha ha, bollocks of the highest order. Okay, and yes, that's pretty typical feminist rhetoric. Not just on Tumblr, I might add. A CEO of a domestic violence charity, whom I would think is a little more sophisticated than a Tumblr feminist, talking just like a Tumblr feminist, like some 17-year-old girl on Tumblr. Okay, Tumblr is not atypical. It is too typical. This response is not, in my experience, here we go, now he confirms me. This response is not, in my experience, untypical of the level of contempt that high-profile feminists in positions of power have for non-feminist thinkers like me. As a younger man, I used to call myself a feminist because I was concerned with the issues that affected women and girls. As I became aware of the issues that men and boys also face, I consistently found feminists and feminism to be not only dismissive of these concerns, but also actively hostile towards men and women who were working to address these issues. Check, 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 and check. All of this tallies with my own lived experience and my own observation. Just bang on the money. I've been experiencing this feminist hostility for nearly 20 years now. It comes in many forms and needs to be addressed if we are to make sustainable progress in the global drive for gender equality. Okay, well, he believes in gender equality. I'm not even sure what that means, but okay, he's moving in the right direction here. To highlight just one strand of my work, for the past 6 years I have been promoting and coordinating the celebration of International Men's Day in the UK. Yeah, that made quite a splash recently. It's an inclusive platform that invites anyone and everyone to put on an event, no matter what their gender politics. Presumably that includes feminists. Okay. Supporters of the day included charities that help male victims of rape and sexual abuse, and campaigners working to address the fact that in the UK, 13 men die from suicide every day. Over the years, a small number of feminist groups have also got behind the day, but some high-profile feminists like the founders of Men Engage and White Ribbon advised their global networks to stay away from the day. Okay. International Men's Day, the big, high-powered feminist movers and shakers are hostile to International Men's Day. Anything that's going to celebrate men, apparently. The reason, my view, is they stay away from International Men's Day because it isn't controlled by feminists. Bingo. And fundamentalist feminists can't cope with inclusive approaches that require them to share a gender political platform with non-feminists. Fuck off and leave us the fuck alone. He seems to be quoting some feminist there. Then there's Kate Smurthwaite, a feminist campaigner named by the BBC as one of their 100 women who responded to an International Men's Day press release in 2014 by sending me a foul-mouthed email saying, "Would you please tell whoever wrote this utter shit to go fuck themselves? Feminism is the same thing as..." Oh my God, here we go. Feminism is the same thing as gender equality. Those who say it is not are lying assholes trying to divide and destroy the movement. Well, you know, she's actually, in a way, she's right about that.
She's got that right, for sure.
Self-fulfilling prophecy there. Does she want to practice a little self-awareness now and ask herself some very basic questions like why people want to divide and destroy such a movement being run by persons such as herself? Maybe she ought to look in the mirror. Please let them know they are misogynist dickwads and that feminism...
Hooray.
Yes, I like her language there. Misogynist dickwads that feminism doesn't want their help. Feminism wants them to fuck off and leave us the fuck alone. She's very, very emotionally overwrought in that passage. Isn't that right, Elizabeth? Don't you think so?
Absolutely. This is another case of, she's discrediting the movement, and it's wonderful.
It is wonderful, yes.
Thank you to Kate.
It's not so wonderful for them, but it sure, makes my heart soar like a hawk to hear this sort of thing happening. Watch them shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, this tells you something about what kind of people they are. That kind of reaction to me just spells nothing more than phony. I can't think of a better word. Phony. Then there's the Labour MP and former domestic violence charity worker Jess Phillips, who tied her, I've heard that name somewhere before, Jess Phillips, who tied herself in gender political knots over International Men's Day this year, first sniggering at it, then offering an apology of sorts for her reaction to it, then saying she was for men's issues, then deriding International Men's Day's track record, then comparing International Men's Day with its focus on helping male victims of rape and preventing male suicide, amongst other things, to White History Month or Able Body Action Day. Okay. Well, if I may interject here a little bit, this is where I would step in and say, as a non-feminist, I find everything that Jess Phillips says problematic. And I reject all of it in toto, because I'm not a feminist, and Jess Phillips clearly is. Okay, that's how I would approach it as a non-feminist, as opposed to approaching it as a men's rights activist or anything like that. Approaching it as from a non-feminist point of view is, I think, a more of a meta kind of approach. It's a higher level approach. And it gets you outside of the entire game and gives you leverage, gives you a power grip on the entire game. Okay. More pertinently, she also publicly declared her hatred for people with a different gender political view to her, saying, "I hate fools who think men don't have equality." Well, actually, if, according to her theory, women are disadvantaged by comparison to men, then men don't have equality. They've got more, by her theory anyway, more than women have got, and that's not equality. That's inequality in their favor. Okay, no, men don't have equality. But I can think of plenty of ways that men don't have equality in a very negative way that's actually in women's favor. All right? Moving along, I am one of those fools that Jess hates. My non-feminist view of gender equality is that there are clearly areas where women and girls experience inequality, and there are areas when men and boys face inequality too. Both of these things are true and both need addressing. It's not a zero-sum game. Helping men and women does not require us to choose between men or women. Well, it seems to me you would have to abandon gender-flavored rhetoric altogether and just start talking about people rather than talking about men one minute, talking about women the next minute. This simple viewpoint is one that feminists and feminism struggles to contend with, and this is deeply problematic for a movement that too often claims to be synonymous with gender equality. Well, the fact that they call their movement feminism, to me, it's no mystery why they struggle with these issues. Just look at their name. How can any movement claim to be all about gender equality and struggle so profoundly to respond to the many gender inequalities that men and boys face? Take the case of the University of York, where the Equality and Diversity Committee decided to support International Men's Day. The response by feminists within the institution was not, "Great, how can we help?" but, "Shit, how can we close this down?" In total, 200 academics, students, and alumni signed an open letter opposing the day, and the institution responded by abandoning its plans. This episode was covered in several places, including The Telegraph, Inside Man, and The Independent. The silver lining on this story was provided by a wonderful York student, Ruth Morris, signing a petition for International Men's Day that garnered over 4,000 signatures. Okay, that's worth pausing over for a moment. 4,000 signatures as against 200. They've still got the power in the ivory tower, but the non-feminist side is coming up in the grassroots now. This is a pattern I see. And that 4,000 against the 200, well, there you go. More evidence. Contrary to what Martin claims, I am not in the business of tarring all feminists as intolerant. Neither am I. Some of them don't need to be. As long as some feminists are intolerant, all feminists don't need to be. They can just divide the field between them and play good cop, bad cop. Okay, that's how it works. When I see tolerant and inclusive feminism, I celebrate it, and so here's Ruth's demonstrating what tolerant, inclusive feminism looks like. True feminists should be fighting for gender equality for both men and women. To cancel Men's Day is simply hypocritical. Equality is not just for women and should concern all genders. I think she means both sexes. Oh boy. All feminists are being wrongly portrayed here, which is simply unfair. We are not man-haters, and the university should go ahead with plans to celebrate all diversity, not just one gender. Okay, you're not all man-haters, but feminism is all about man-hating. The fact that some feminists are man-haters makes it unnecessary for all feminists to be man-haters. And if man-hating feminists did not exist somewhere, somehow in the world, then feminism full stop would simply cease to exist. There wouldn't be any feminism anymore were it not for the existence of man-hating and man-hating feminists. Okay. These incidents demonstrate the vital importance of creating non-feminist and non-feminist inclusive spaces to discuss gender issues, particularly those affecting men and boys. One reason is simply that such initiatives bring to light the fundamentalist opposition to intellectual diversity that seems to be endemic in the feminist movement. Fundamentalist opposition to intellectual diversity. Another reason is that if feminism really is about gender equality and yet struggles to address the gender equality issues that men and boys face, which it clearly does, then embracing and supporting others who are committed to and focused on addressing the equality issues facing men and boys is surely something to be welcome. If feminism is really about gender equality for all, then why is it so hostile to those who are concerned with highlighting and addressing the equality issues that men and boys face? Well, that's easy. Because if those issues were brought to the fore, that would be the end of feminism. These fundamentalist tendencies within feminism go to the very top. In 2014, I was privileged to be invited by UN Women to attend a workshop about the He for She campaign with Emma Watson and a select gathering of experts. There was a magical moment before the event started when I asked one of the organizers why they'd invited me to speak. He told me there were lots of female academics talking about men and gender, but not many men, and they wanted a male academic to contribute, albeit a pro-feminist one. Then I dropped the bombshell. But I'm not an academic, and I'm not a feminist. The look of absolute horror on the guy's face was priceless, like a caterer at a... Oh, this is good. Like a caterer at a bar mitzvah suddenly discovering the chef has put ham in the soup that has been served to all the guests. You see, had they realized I was a non-feminist in advance, they would never have invited me, because He for She and UN Women are feminist campaigns for gender equality for women, not non-feminist inclusive campaigns for gender equality for all. Then there's the European Union. In 2012, the EU agency, European Institute for Gender Equality, created a network of approved NGOs that work with men on gender equality issues. The feminist team behind the project went through an extensive process of defining how men should or shouldn't be allowed to engage in gender equality work across Europe, including the UK. The report promotes pro-feminist work involving men and gender equality policies across Europe and rejects non-feminist approaches and theories that highlight discrimination against men, which includes anti-feminist, men's rights, and fathers' rights approaches. At the same time, the European Institute of Gender Equality compiled a database of approved men's organizations across Europe who were considered to be suitable for inclusion in gender equality work. Any organization or individual considered to have rejected the study's understanding of gender equality was excluded. And therein lies the fundamentalism of feminism writ large across publicly funded gender political thinking in Europe. The team behind this project identified 5 types of gender politics that men engage in. Now, this is interesting. The 5 types of gender politics that men engage in: men's liberation, anti-sexist or pro-feminist, spiritual and mythopoetic, Christian, men's rights, and fathers' rights. Interesting that they identified these as types of gender politics that men engage in, because I see no reason that women would not also engage in these. In fact, I see women engaging in a lot of this activity as well. But I guess these feminists, they want to see this as a men against women narrative, or a men against feminism narrative. The hierarchy of gender politics. What this list represents is a hierarchy of approved gender political viewpoints. The top groups are considered to be superior and are included in an approved list of stakeholders working for gender equality. The bottom 3 groups are considered to be inferior and excluded from the list, though may be let in if vetted and approved. So the bottom 3, just to recap this, it's spiritual and mythopoetic, Christian, and men's rights and fathers' rights. So the 2 kinds of male gender political activism which they consider acceptable is men's liberation and anti-sexist or pro-feminist. I don't fit neatly into any of those boxes, and there are groups that are completely overlooked For example, charities and campaigns working to end male circumcision don't fit into any of those categories, though men from each category may support their aims. What this incomplete list confirms is that there are many forms of non-feminism. Ka-ching! My own personal version of non-feminism includes aspects of all 5 groups and more besides, though I am neither Christian nor pro-feminist. More broadly, beyond my own specific viewpoints, I believe that approaches to addressing gender equality should include all of those groups and more besides. And this is where I find myself at odds with the fundamentalist approach to gender equality that feminists and pro-feminists promote. Essentially, what feminism does is to create a closed club that excludes people with particular worldviews, like myself, and then when we criticize feminism for attempting to exclude us from the world of gender equality, we are attacked for not supporting feminism. You know, that sums it up pretty well. I don't support feminism because feminism attacks me for not supporting feminism. If feminism would stop attacking me and make itself more acceptable to me, if feminism would amend itself and modify itself to a form that I find acceptable, then I would no longer attack feminism. And then I might even call myself a feminist under those conditions. However, don't worry, I don't see that day coming ever, to be quite frank. It's not like inviting people to a party, putting bouncers on the door to prevent us from getting in, and then when we complain, attacking us for being rude and not showing up at the party. We need diversity in gender politics. The fact is that gender politics is a diverse field, and I happen to believe that we should work to embrace that diversity rather than seek to create hierarchies of gender political thought that actively exclude particular worldviews. In this respect, I tend to find myself at odds with both feminists and anti-feminists, because while anti-feminism is one form of non-feminism, and while I agree that many of the issues highlighted by anti-feminists are not being addressed by feminism, my experience of anti-feminists is that they also find inclusivity and diversity in gender politics confronting. However, as anti-feminists tend to have very little, if any, power in the world of gender equality, this is mere trivia when compared to the damage that feminists and feminism is doing with its fundamentalist resistance to intellectual diversity in gender politics. Very good. Feminism is doing more damage because, of course, feminism has all the power. Nor do I think that the report's analysis of anti-feminists seeking to undermine gender equality is a fair or reasonable analysis. Most, though not all, anti-feminists that I have encountered simply see themselves as having a different view of what gender equality is to most feminists. From my own perspective, the reason I am a non-feminist is that I care deeply and passionately about every girl and boy on this planet being given every opportunity to flourish and thrive and fulfill their potential. I believe that deepening our understanding of men, masculinity, and manhood is central to that. But unlike the feminists and pro-feminists, I don't view men and masculinities as socially constructed and produced rather than natural. As an integral non-feminist thinker, I believe that gender is a product of both nature, i.e. biology and evolved psychology, and nurture, social and cultural conditioning. There are lots of different ways to define people's gender politics, and we all have gender politics. And one way is to consider if you think being a man is a product of nature, a product of nurture, or a combination of nature and nurture. As the majority of feminist thinking emanates from the social sciences, other valuable perspectives from disciplines such as biology, psychology, and neuroscience are often excluded from our approach to gender equality. This is another manifestation of the fundamentalist tendency within feminism to exclude worldviews that are not readily aligned to feminist thinking. And this is a very long article, but I am approaching the end. Now, he says, when feminists are absolutely brilliant, okay? But if we want to live in a world that works for everyone, and I do, we can't do this by trying to force everyone to think the same. We can only do it by learning to integrate the very best of the many different worldviews that are found around the globe. Well, what he doesn't seem to realize is that some worldviews are inherently incompatible. How do you integrate them? The feminist approach to gender equality does not do this. It excludes people like me and many wonderful men and women around the world who don't tick the feminist or pro-feminist box. The reason I don't support feminism is that I support equality and diversity, and I support the inclusion of worldviews that I don't agree with in the world of gender politics. Feminists are absolutely brilliant at trying to promote all manner of sexual diversity and gender diversity in the world, and while I don't always agree with the methods, I do 100% support the intention. And I ask of all feminists and feminism, and all I ask of feminists and feminism is that you extend that brilliant thinking to embrace intellectual diversity, which means welcoming and including those who hold views that are non-feminist into the worlds of gender politics, gender issues, and gender equality. I know that this is a big ask. It's difficult for people in power to let go. But while as an individual it is perfectly acceptable to think we should all be feminists, once you become a collective force that holds power, authority, and influence, you have a responsibility to be inclusive of a diverse range of gender political viewpoints. And feminism is shirking that responsibility big time. And that, for now, is why I don't support feminist campaigns for gender equality, because I'm not a feminist. My definition of gender equality is different from most feminists, and too many feminist initiatives designed to engage men in gender equality actively exclude non-feminists. And most importantly of all, I believe the way to resolve the world's problems is not to enforce a singular worldview on any issue, but to develop our ability to integrate and include a diversity of ways of thinking about problems rather than excluding people who dare to think differently. As the freethinker Claire Lehmann argues, almost every advance in human history first came from a person willing to look at the world or the status quo from a different angle. And that's the end of that very, very, very long article. Thank goodness. Elizabeth, anything you want to say about that?
Oh no, it was great. Glenn Paul smashes it as usual. But listen, it is past my curfew. I'm going to have to duck out of here right now.
All right. Well, now you take care, and I will keep the episode rolling.
I'll listen to the rest of it tomorrow. Good to talk.
All right. Talk to you later, Elizabeth.
Night.
Good night. So, I forgot how long that article was. That just went on and on and on. But it was good. It was good.
Oh, looks like we lost everybody, folks. One dropped, everybody dropped, except me. We will be right back in just a moment. Give Fidelbogen a second to get back, please.
Hello, I'm back.
Oh, yes. Glad you're back, man. All right, go
Okay.
ahead.
Can you cue me or clue me about where I cut out?
No, unfortunately, I can't.
So I can get it. Okay, Elizabeth left. Was
That
I
was about
still?
the time you cut out.
So shortly after Elizabeth left, I cut out.
Yeah,
Shortly after,
within seconds.
shortly after Elizabeth cut out, I cut out. That sounds metaphysical there. I don't know. Anyway, okay, I was talking about this article, this great and wonderful article here, and I'm going to have a hard time recapturing everything that I went on and said when I was not on the air just now. But the article is great, and everybody go and read that article. I mean it seriously. Go read it and save yourself a copy, archive it. It's one of those texts that you're going to find useful later on. Okay. Everything that was talked about in that article that I just read by Glenn Poole is pure kryptonite to feminism. It's deadly to feminism. I don't care how much he tries to dress it up by describing himself as non-feminist or putting in little bits about feminism is brilliant about this, that, or the other thing. Effectually, the kind of thinking that is outlined in that article would put an end to feminism. It would put an end to feminism. It would stop feminism dead in its tracks. And whether it calls itself anti-feminist or calls itself non-feminist, it really doesn't matter. You apply that kind of thinking and that kind of policy in dealing with feminism, that's it for feminism. No more feminism. And I hear people getting very, very self-righteous and very, very huffy and say, I'm not non-feminist, I'm anti-feminist. You can't just be you're trying to be politically correct. No, screw that. Simply saying no to feminism in any way, and that's what non-feminism is. It's saying no to feminism in the most very fundamental sense. Non-feminist, you say no to feminism, that's it. You will kill feminism. And I wish some people would get that through their heads. It's not a tough concept to figure out. Anti-feminism sounds like you're putting up your dukes and you're fighting it. Non-feminism is like you're just sitting there and starving it, like you're quietly pulling the plug. To adopt an aggressive militant oppositional stance in the long run just feeds the feminist narrative. You position yourself as an aggressor and a bully, and that is how they will portray you. They will construct a threat narrative around you. If you simply say, no thanks, I'm not a feminist, and refuse to engage with feminism, refuse to acknowledge the feminist worldview, refuse to play ball with feminism, even in a very passive way, in the long run, the cumulative effect of that and of people in growing numbers behaving just that way, that'll kill feminism just as effectively as putting up an aggressive response to it. In fact, I would even submit more effectively. Anyway, great article. Again, go read it and save it. Share it with other people. Things are moving in the right direction, and I can see it here. Okay. Now, I wanted to mention something. Just today, I put up a poll on Twitter. You can do that on Twitter. You put up a question, and then you can put in a couple of check boxes. You can say yes or no, or agree or disagree, or whatever. So I put up a question on Twitter, And it said, if I can recall it, the non-feminist sector is morally sufficient without feminist input. That was the question. The non-feminist sector is morally sufficient without feminist input. In other words, the non-feminist sector, meaning you and me, we and everything in the universe which is not feminist, doesn't need any kind of moral instructions or marching orders or advice or guidance from feminism. Okay? Feminism has no particular special thing or special ingredient X that we lack in order to make our lives, our world, and our spiritual evolution complete. We, as a world, as a sector of humanity, as a part of the human adventure, let us say, we non-feminist people really don't need feminism. Feminism has nothing to give us that we couldn't find on our own. Okay? Anyway, the last time I looked, there was, I think, 120 answers to that Twitter poll that I put up, and the great majority of them said, agreed. We don't need any kind of feminist input in the non-feminist sector. There was a small number amounting to something like 10% that disagreed. So, what do you want to bet that the 10% who disagreed were feminists? Okay, now what does this tell you? Well, these people were disagreeing. They were saying that, yes, feminist input into the non-feminist sector is necessary, that the non-feminist sector is not morally sufficient without feminist input. And you know damn well the people who answered in that vein, they were feminists. Now, think about the implications here. Think about the implications. There is no good move you can make if you're a feminist. And if you respond to this poll, there is really no good move you can make. Either answer you give, you're still in a trap. And let me explain why that is. If you say, I disagree, you're saying that the rest of the world is incomplete or insufficient and that feminism has to intervene and straighten everybody else out. And you know what? That's mighty arrogant. Okay? That's, that makes feminism look like an asshole, quite frankly. Now, if they answer the other way and they say, yeah, I agree that the non-feminist sector is morally sufficient without feminist input, if they agree to that, then they are effectively agreeing that feminism is unnecessary. Did you catch that? They are agreeing that feminism is unnecessary, that other people who aren't feminists can, in many cases, get along just fine without feminism. There's nothing that feminism has to offer that we couldn't find on our own just as well. So the poll gives the feminists two choices: either be an asshole and show yourself to be an asshole, or show yourself to be unnecessary. Now, this is devious. This is dastardly. This is a very important idea, and I think we can exploit this idea in the future in many ways. Feminism is not necessary. Feminism is either an asshole or it's not necessary. And if feminism is an asshole, it's certainly not necessary. And if feminism is nice and admits that non-feminist people don't need feminism, well, then feminism is unnecessary. Either way, feminism is unnecessary. This really puts feminism on the spot, and it's not a pleasant spot to be if you're a feminist. to be told that you're either an asshole or unnecessary. So the poll on Twitter has still got about 16 hours to run. I'd be curious to see just how many people vote on it, but the response was overwhelming. And unfortunately, I do not have the link to that poll, or I would give it to you. I didn't think to include it in the queue list, but I wanted to share that anyway, because I know that a lot of you will right away see what the implications are. I think it's very interesting. Now, moving along. We were going to say, what were we going to say? Oh, yes. Cue number 5. This is a wonderful diagram that in its way is just as good as the feminist, non-feminist cooperation spiral that we talked about before. This is cue number 5. Layers of a hate movement. Go take a look at it when you find time. It's a complicated octopus, but it explains just about everything about how feminism works. Feminism is a cult that considers everything outside of feminism, the existence of non-feminism, to be a problem. And this lays it all out very clearly, albeit in a tangled and complicated way. But there it is. I suggest you go and take a look at it. I suggest you right-click and save and keep this diagram and study it at your leisure and include it in the teaching texts that you may have occasion to use in the future. That is cue number 5. Now, I see that we've got about maybe 12 minutes left in the program. And I had some more things I was going to cover here, but I've spent so much time going over the original material, the earlier material, that I don't think I'm going to have time to do justice to the things that I had sketched out for the remainder of the program. So folks, I think I'm going to wrap it up now for Vanguard Report episode number 80. And as always, the email address here is vanguardreport@usa.com. Send your love mail, send your hate mail. It's all good. vanguardreport@usa.com. And as always, never forget, we are not feminist. And so we have a very special power. We get to say what feminism is, because that is what defines our identity as not being feminist. The very first thing we do to establish our position, our identity as non-feminist, is to define the term feminism from our own unique perspective, which is non-feminist. By defining feminism into existence, we define ourselves into existence. And when I say defining feminism into existence, I mean defining it into existence as we define it and not as somebody else defines it. Feminism is what we say it is. It's not what the feminists say it is. When the feminists tell you what feminism is, trust me, they are misleading you. They are steering you right straight down the garden path. All right? Feminism is what we say it is. You'll never get a complete or full or accurate picture of the reality of feminism if you just listen to what the feminists tell you. You got to see feminism from the outside. And in order to see it from the outside, you need to have an outside in the first place to see it from. And that's where non-feminist identity begins. It begins outside of feminism. And we establish a difference between inside and outside by defining feminism from a very different vantage point than what feminists define it from. So, once again, feminism is what we say it is. Feminism is what we say it is. And on that note, I wish everybody a very good day, and we will see you later.